Thanks to those of you who have checked out my Patreon, I am able to make a new series of Pokemon Epics, and a big shout out, of course, to the Nerd Therapist and Wilgrim. Hey Pokemon Master, Buskirk here, and thank you for clicking on this video. What if Marshadow was good? Like, really good? What if instead of just being a sort of disposable mythical Pokemon... Oh, sorry Marshadow. What if, instead of just being some kind of disposable mythical Pokemon, Marshadow was an integral inclusion into the Generation 7 games? What if I'm sitting there in the Game Freak offices and there is Junichi Masuda and I'm like, Junichi Masuda, what are you doing here? You don't even work on these games, it's Amori this time. Ooh, twist. And Amori is there telling me about this new Pokemon Marshadow that's going to be put into the game. And of course, how it will be included into the 20th Pokemon movie. This is gonna be a big one. And I'm there thinking, Amori, my dude, you're a genius. How are we going to integrate its lore with Ho-Ohs in the movie or with the Alola region? And Amori says, we're not. It actually really doesn't have that much to do with Ho-Oh or anything to do with Alola at all. Oh boy, okay. As so many of you know, I am not a fan of the way that lots of mythical Pokemon and sometimes legendaries are just put into the game with what feels like not a lot of thought about how they're going to be included into the game's lore. So I like to do this series where I rewrite the lore and pretend that I'm a creative and just do some fan fictioning. Of course, I want you to get creative with me in the comments, and the reason I chose Marshadow is simply because it's Halloween, and other than Giratina, it is the only Ghost-type legendary. Ghost Fighting, which is a really unique typing, and I think we can tie that into the lore of the games. Marshadow is known as the Gloomdweller Pokemon, and it has appeared in the Pokemon 20th movie, I Choose You. It appeared alongside some other legends. Raikou was in there, Entei, Suicune, and Ho-Oh, and they are all very deeply connected. And then Marshadow is in there as kind of like the main antagonist. But what does Marshadow do? Well, it's after the Rainbow Wing, which Ash Ketchum is also after, or I think Ash Ketchum has. Do you know what? It's been a while since I watched the film. Didn't love the film either. Sorry to be so negative, but actually that's in theme with Marshadow, because Marshadow just seems to be a Pokemon of negative emotions. It like feeds off of negative emotions, and it turns the Rainbow Wing into this black feather, and then it almost like curses the area, and all of the Pokemon get purple eyes and dark auras. They basically become shadow Pokemon from Pokemon Colosseum. Ooh, Ho-Oh's in Pokemon Colosseum. Maybe there's a, Pokemon theory. But here's the thing, when it came to getting Marshadow in the game, you went to a game store, you got a download code, you put it in your console, and that's it. It has two forms. It's kind of got the in-battle mode and the non-battle mode, and it's a fighting ghost type. This Pokemon should be interesting, and I think there is the perfect place to put it in Alola. So, let's take a look at Pokemon Sun and Moon, and pretend that we are creatives and come up with a better story. Now here's what I'm thinking. It's the post-game. You've defeated the first ever Alola League and the champion Kukui. Across your journeys, you've fought Ultra Beasts, you've fought Luzamine, and you fought one other very integral character, Guzma. Guzma, for those of you who don't know, was actually brought up on Mele Mele Island, the same island where you start your Alolan adventure, the same island where you're growing up. Guzma wanted to be a trial captain, and while Guzma was always a good trainer, a strong trainer, he was never the best. You can find his house on Route 2, and in that house there are a bunch of silver and bronze trophies. He's always good, but he's not the best, and there's actually, well, there's this backstory, and Hybrid Hero did a whole theory about it, and I think the theory is pretty likely that Guzma was a victim of abuse under his father. There is a set of golf clubs in the house that are broken, and say that they're broken because they've probably been hit on something, and the father talks about being beaten up and beating up, and Guzma's whole character of being someone who just wants to prove how tough they are and how scary and threatening they are, it's very in line with a bully who has maybe had some horrible home issues. It's nothing to joke about, and I also don't think it's something to be thrown away. I think there's an opportunity for some Pokemon storytelling here. And I think as a character that harbors negative emotions, Guzma is probably the person that we want to focus on. So, with that sour note out of the way, you've beaten the Pokemon League, you're back on Mele Mele Island, and you end up in Guzma's house. And you go into Route 2, and you go into Guzma's house, and you see Guzma trying to reconcile with his parents. He talks about how he used to be so angry, but he met a trainer, and that trainer, has kind of helped him through it almost. Guzma's father talks about how his father brought him up in a similar kind of way, and that it was absolutely, definitely wrong. And that Guzma is a proud member of the family. Guzma then sees you and says, hey, why don't we go and visit the nearby graveyard? You know, a cheery outing. There's a graveyard on Mili Island right next to Guzma's house pretty much, and I think it's an opportunity for Guzma to maybe walk there with you and talk more about his family, and we just get a bit of backstory. We understand why Guzma is the way he is and how he's trying to change for the better, but it's just so hard when you've been carrying around all these negative emotions for so many years. At that point, in the graveyard, a Pokemon apparates. It's Marshadow. A ghost Pokemon, because it's in a cemetery. A ghost Pokemon formed from the negative emotions of Guzma. You battle it. It's in its shadowy Gloomdweller form. You give it a battle, but you are not allowed to throw any Pokeballs at it. For whatever reason, you're like... Maybe it's kind of like the ghost in Lavender Town, where it's just the form is a form where you just sort of assume that Pokeballs won't work. Or maybe you click on the Pokeball button and it says, no, you have to beat this thing quickly. Stop it. So you go ahead and you battle it and you beat it. When Marshadow is defeated, it kind of disappears as a shadow and zooms off across the island. Guzma kind of wonders what that was about and is like, hey, that Pokemon seemed really strong and almost kind of familiar to him. It's like he's seen those negative emotions before in himself. He thinks that with a Pokemon like that, maybe he could finally finish first in something, and so he decides to pursue it around the island. As you leave the graveyard area, you see the Delibird that you would have seen earlier on at the beginning of the game, the one that shakes the berry tree. And the Delibird attacks you. It has purple eyes and a shadowy aura. It is again a shadow Pokemon. You can't catch shadow Pokemon, you throw a Pokeball and it just bats the Pokeball away. So instead you have to defeat it. If you try to head south towards Hyrule City, you will be stopped by Hala, who is of course the island's Grand Kahuna, and a group of rampaging Tauros that also have the purple eyes and the shadowy aura. Guzma says, come back later, head north, I don't know what's happening to the Pokemon on the island. Now, because you haven't been able to capture any Pokemon thus far, you're having to battle them all, you will need to make use of the Pokemon Center on Route 2/3 to kind of make sure that your Pokemon are fully healed at all times. On Route 3, there are these shadows of flying Pokemon that appear, you might remember, and of course if you walk into one, you battle the Pokemon. But now these shadows will chase you even more aggressively, as well as the Pokemon that appear in the grass that chase you. And yeah, every Pokemon will be a shadow Pokemon, it'll be even stronger. NPCs will talk about how they saw a shadowy Pokemon come through here, and now all the Pokemon on the island have started behaving very erratically and weird. You follow the island around, Route 3, and then down back, I think it's back into Route 1. As you get there, there's the bit where you, I forget the name of it, but there's the yellow flowered grove that is in your way, and at the beginning of Pokemon Sun and Moon, you go in there to save Nebby and Lily. Well, in the grove this time, there is a Shadow Komodo. This is just kind of like a little shout out and a nod to the fact that in Pokemon Colosseum and Gale of Darkness, you battle Shadow Metagross and Dragonite and Tyranitar. All the pseudo-legendaries usually have Shadow Pokemon. And it's also kind of a shout out to the Pokemon Sun and Moon demo where you battle a Hakamoto as the main boss. Anyway, while you're there, you're in the grove, there's this Shadow Komodo, it's terrorizing the grove and it's terrorizing the trainers that are just there trying to enjoy the day. We don't know what's going on and Professor Kukui is there. You battle it with Professor Kukui and after the battle it flees, and Kukui kind of explains that there is in the legend of Alola a Pokemon that will appear. When someone is able to remove enough negative emotion from themselves, this Pokemon will appear. Its name is Marshadow, it's the Gloomdweller Pokemon, and it can't help it, it's just what the Pokemon does. It tries to spread that negativity to everything it touches. Because it itself doesn't like being sad, it sees people around it being happy, and it needs to inflict that on other people, much like Guzma did. Professor Kukui also tells you a little bit about Guzma's history and how both Professor Kukui and Guzma failed to become trial captains. How had Guzma been as lucky as Professor Kukui and had a wonderful life in the Alola region, that maybe he could have gone down a different path and become a champion or helped set up a league like Kukui did. And really a lot of the difference between where Kukui is emotionally these days as well as Guzma is, a lot of it is just luck. And that while Kukui has absolutely worked hard, he's very, very grateful to be where he is. Anyway, you need to help Guzma, because if he comes into contact with that Pokemon and decides to align with it, Guzma may just fall back into the same kind of very negative behaviors that he had before. So sure enough, you head round to Iki Town, where you see Guzma declaring his victory over Hala. Hala is now there, and Guzma is saying that now that he has the most powerful Pokemon on his team, a Pokemon that completely understands him, there's no reason he can't be the Grand Kahuna of Mili Island. You of course interact with Guzma and you try explaining to him that this power is wrong. You'll explain to him that this Pokemon, Marshadow, it is something that Given the right love and attention, maybe it wouldn't be so sad anymore, but alongside Guzma, it could cause Guzma to kind of relapse and become a villain again. We're just making our Pokemon characters a little bit more three-dimensional, you know? Of course, Guzma says no, and wants to challenge you to a battle. And much like the villains at the end of the Rainbow Rocket arc, he has 5 Pokemon in his team, his usual onslaught of bug Pokemon, including Gliscopod. And the 6th Pokemon is Marshadow. He used Marshadow's fighting power to defeat the previous fighting Grand Kahuna of the island, Hala. But of course, you battle him, and you win. You take out his team, and you take out Marshadow. Marshadow flees and disappears. Guzma says you're right, he's better off without that negativity in his life. Ever since he went home and he's found forgiveness in the family, he's now striving towards a much better future. However, that negativity is still out there in the world. While the Pokemon on the island have probably calmed down now that Marshadow has been hurt, if the negativity stays out there too long, it could start affecting others, and it really just needs a trainer like you to go and give it love and affection and to capture it. That is what Marshadow needs. So you go back to the cemetery at any point after that, and then, only then you can catch Marshadow. So yeah, I got a little bit deep. I think I was a little bit more emotive than I was expecting to go with it, but that is the truly tragic story of Guzma that is only very lightly explored in these games. I do recommend you check out the theory by Hybrid Hero. I think it makes perfect sense. And as for Marshadow, I think it fits the character of Guzma perfectly, and there's an opportunity for some story exploration there. Plus the fact that there's a graveyard right next to Guzma's house, and it is, you know, it's a ghost Pokemon. It's also on the island where there's the fighting Kahuna and it's part of fighting. I just think it makes a lot of sense. But with that said, that is just me trying to get a little bit creative with the ghost Pokemon before Halloween comes up. Let me know your thoughts on how you would make Marshadow more interesting in the comments, and if for any reason this video has been a little bit like, oh, that hits home, I just want to be loved. Just know that, hey, I love and appreciate you, and thank you for watching. Look after yourself, and I hope you're looking forward to Pokemon Sword and Shield. So hi, Pokemon Masters.
This is Ash Ketchum. You just watched a video by Birdkeeper Toby. That makes you a